or inexpensive liners made for large tanks, the bricks and the paving stones are all reclaimed materials bought at a fraction of the price you'd have to pay in a shop. Even the rocks for the rockery, half of them came from a relation's fireplace that he knocked down and was going to throw away. The main large fish pond at the bottom of the garden that already existed was only about a foot deep, wasn't holding water, hadn't been built very well, and the clay hadn't been puddled up the sides. The island was a nuisance, and it was just a marsh, a good idea for mosquitoes, but with no fish because the herons had already come and cleared it out, with it being so shallow. So the digger driver was going to have to dig the whole of this out, use some of the clay that's in the bottom of the pond around the edge of our boundaries, and then use the rest to puddle up the sides of the pond as he dug it deeper. Felix the cat became a new addition to our family from a local refuge centre. It's as if he's already been here for most of his life, just settled in straight away and loves it. Here you see the chainsaw carved fish that I brought from the Paradieu, placed onto the top of that tree stump which had died off. All of the rose arches you see here are prefabricated and are quite reasonably priced at about £5 a piece in light tubular steel. I just hope they survive the strong winds. A previous dog kennel cage was turned into another bird run, and a wasted piece of land at the side we turned into the chicken run area. Grow bags and plant trays were soon put into the little new greenhouse, or an old shed, wood shed, and we soon had small plants growing there. Patrick's had lots of fun in my workshops, but he made this bird table in France at school. We took it further with the new chicken run, and I showed him how to make the nest box, the new egg box. Shortly after this we purchased 3 ex-battery hen chickens and established them in the run, and we're getting 2 to 3 eggs a day from the 3. This is the area where I want the greenhouse to go. I've been offered a second-hand greenhouse, again at a reasonable price, so I really couldn't refuse because I want to have these short summers lengthened at each end of the season by having a greenhouse that I can plant and work in spring and in autumn. Before I can do that though, this huge old tree trunk had to be removed. The digger driver did a great job. But before the whole tree trunk was totally taken away from the land, I took one slice off with a chainsaw and carved our new house sign, Curlew Cottage, which you'll see later in the film. Garden canes and string became very useful for marking out the designs and areas that were in my head or on those plans to see just where I was going to place the paths and gardens. From the very outset we had plants and trees we'd already been buying from cheap auctions and plant sales, and now we're also putting in the conifers and screening trees to keep this bitter east sea wind off us during the winter. In this case you can see we're putting the conifers. Then serious work began on the main fish pond. The previous owner had planted reeds and rushes, and they soon overtook in the shallow water filled with mud and clay. As you see, the Fendon landscape here is very flat, so it's very important that we start to design these screening areas of trees and bushes. You can't block the wind completely, but to break it is a better idea. When the smaller marsh pond above the koi pond using the butyl liner had been completed, we were able to take a chunk of these rushes and reeds out and simply plonk it at the edge of the new pond to establish themselves into that. Felix found these proceedings most interesting and kept a wary eye on us all. Start the serious finishing work, and here you see us using the digger to actually bring in some rushes and reeds to put at the side of the pond. Everything was to work by gravity, water pumped to the top, no glue used in the liner at all. Everything had to overlap, gradually working downward so the water wouldn't leak back up the non-sealed part. It took the digger driver several days, but he eventually got down to good solid clay, a bit sandy, and then was able to draw the clay up the banks to help seal the big fish pond. You can see here that water was already seeping in from the water table. Some old scaffolding planks had been purchased and sprayed with a good creosote type chemical, and we'd made those into the 4 temporary raised beds. I say temporary because we hoped that the main raised beds would be inside the greenhouse, although we'll continue to use these ones outside as well. My lawn mowings were being made use of too. As they dried off into hay, these house martins came and took most of them away to use in their nests. They were also taking the clay from the edge of the pond. Here you see the brick board has been laid, and the basics of the rockery for the stream has been done, although I did make many more adjustments afterwards. This recess between the poplar trees overlooking the top pond made an ideal little secret hidey hole to sit and enjoy the view. This area has been scraped away ready for preparation for the greenhouse. And this raised bed is going to be used for the fruit, soft fruits such as strawberries and raspberry canes. Even my wire ducks in France have found a new place in the garden. To continue my Mediterranean memories, I've placed 2 Mediterranean type cypresses here to give a feeling of perspective as we look down the garden towards the gate. This small round flower bed has a central column for runner beans, which are also a very attractive flower plant as well as vegetable. I don't have the strength and mobility to go around with the strimmer all the time, so I'm going to have to spray all the edges and verges, get rid of all the weeds, so that my job is made easy to just ride around on the tractor mower. Short stroll and enjoy the bracing sea air, hopefully a little warmer this summer. You'll notice that here, even on the nicest of days, that wind is still blowing strongly, so imagine what it can be like in winter. Quite a gale and very sharp, not a time to be out and about. The raised experimental beds were planted with almost every vegetable you can think of, from cabbages to broad beans, peas, carrots and even some spinach, to see what we can do in a small space and small area this year. Although I bought many new trees and plants since I've been over, I've also brought some plants and trees with us from France. 2 walnut trees, for instance. It was very pleasing to see this sweet chestnut tree growing in the garden as well. I've seen no evidence of the actual sweet chestnuts, but the tree certainly is there, and the small established orchard will also give us some nice apples and some cherries, I believe, as well. We have plenty of old and new bricks around the place, and so we're able to have a small barbecue built using a cheap B&Q barbecue set to fit within it. So in a matter of weeks we've established the basic garden design, we've got the ponds nearly completed, and we're able to sit and enjoy the actual garden itself, having barbecues. Earlier I mentioned that I took a slice of that old tree trunk and tree root and turned it into our new cottage sign. There's a lot to see locally as well in Mablethorpe too, so we decided to take some time off with the family and go and see the local seal sanctuary.